لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. For those of you brave enough to venture out into the cold, Jazakumullah khair. I wouldn't have. But no, inshallah, we'll make it worth your while. Last week we spoke a little bit about the story of, rather about the different religions and how they came to the area of the Arabian Peninsula. And last we spoke, or the last portion that we spoke about was about Tubban As'ad. And we said Tubban As'ad was the king of Yemen, and we spoke about how he went to the city of Al-Madinah, and how he met the Yahud in the city of Al-Madinah, and how he brought the religion of the Jews into all the way to Yemen. He brought it all the way back to Yemen. And the last story that we spoke about last week was actually about Zur'a di Nawas. And Zur'a di Nawas was the son of Tubban As'ad. And we said that, he continued in the tradition of his father, teaching the people Judaism, and those who would not follow the religion, then he would have them killed. And we spoke about, of course, his story and the story of the young boy who was on the religion of Al-Nasraniyya, or the religion actually of Isa alayhi salam, rather, the true religion of Isa alayhi salam. And so we spoke about that story. And inshallah, today we'll continue on a little bit with the situation in Yemen. And this specific story has special significance, and we'll speak about that a little bit when we get to the end. There's a reason why we're narrating this. There's a purpose behind this narration. And we said that Zur'a di Nawas, he continued to persecute those who followed the religion of the boy. Remember, the boy was following the religion of Isa alayhi salam, the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the true form of Tawheed. And Zur'a di Nawas, last we spoke about the ditch that he dug, or he had the people dig throughout the area of Yemen, and whoever was following the religion of the boy, he would have them thrown into this ditch, and there was of course fire in the ditch, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this in Surah Al-Buruj. And as he was killing these people one by one, those who refused to give up the religion of the boy, the religion of Tawheed, Zur'a di Nawas, as he was killing them, a man by the name of Daar-us Tha'laban happened to get away. So he was on the religion of Isa alayhi salam, and Daar-us Tha'laban happened to get away. He got on a horse and he fled Saba, and he rode all the way until he came to Qaisar. Qaisar, of course, is Caesar, or it's a title, and it's Caesar, and at this time he's Julius, or Justin II rather. And Daar-us Tha'laban came to him. Justin II is an emperor from the Byzantine Empire. In the year about 570 is when he takes control, I believe. In any case, Daar-us Tha'laban, he comes to Justin II, and he beseeches him for help against Zur'a di Nawas. So he's saying that this person, Zur'a di Nawas, he's killing the people on your religion. Of course, the Byzantine Empire is on the religion of Christianity, right? So he's going to him and he's saying, Zur'a di Nawas, who's on the religion of Yahudiyya, he's killing the people who are following your religion, he's saying. So Qaisar replies to him and he said, بعدت بلادك منا ولكني سأكتب لك إلى ملك الحبشة فإنه على هذا الدين وهو أقرب إلى بلادك. He said that your land is far from me. So remember, this guy went all the way from Yemen all the way to Ash-Sham, to the area of Ash-Sham, and he came to the king, and the king said, listen, or he came to Caesar, and the Caesar said, listen, you're too far from me, but I'm going to write to you, or for you, to the king of Al-Habashah. And he's on our religion as well, and we'll see if he can help you. So he writes to the king of Al-Habashah because he's closer to him. And the king of Al-Habashah, or the title that's given to him, is Al-Najashi. Al-Najashi. And Al-Najashi is also a title. At this particular time, Allah Ta'ala Alam, but he's not the same Najashi that we're going to speak about when we speak a little bit more about the Seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, whose name is Ashama. He is, we'll speak a little bit more about him as we go on throughout the Seerah. But this is Najashi, this, as we mentioned, is a title. This king of Al-Habashah, he sent an army by the sea of about 70,000 people to Yemen. So he sent an army from Al-Habashah to Yemen, and at the head of the army was a person by the name of Ariyat. And with him was Daus the Tha'laban, and with him as well was Abrahah Al-Habashee. So we have Ariyat, who's the head of the army, Daus the Tha'laban, the one who escaped Yemen and came and asked for help, and Abrahah Al-Habashee. Now when they arrived at the coast of Yemen, Zur'a the Nawas, when he heard about this approach of the army, and the army has landed on the coast, Zur'a the Nawas, the king of Yemen, quickly puts an army together, a large army together, and he heads out to confront them on the shores of Yemen. And as they go out to confront them, or as a battle ensues, the army of Zur'a the Nawas was absolutely crushed by the army of Ariyat, the one that came from Al-Habashah. And Zur'a the Nawas, when he saw his army get destroyed, he gets on his horse and he begins to strike his horse until he rides out to the sea, and he drowns himself, killing himself in the sea. And Ariyat becomes the ruler of Yemen. Now Ariyat, he ruled for a number of years. But during this time, throughout this stay in Yemen, Abrahah Al-Habashee, he begins to sort of gain support amongst the soldiers that came in with them. And some of the army began to side with Ariyat, and some of the army began to side with Abrahah. And it became almost like a 50-50 split between them. And Abrahah began to accuse Ariyat, saying that, you're being disloyal to Al-Habashah, rather, you're doing things for yourself, but you're not doing it for Al-Najashi and Al-Habashah. So there arose sort of a great tension between them, until Abrahah wrote to Ariyat, and he said, listen, the only way to settle this is if you and I fight. So Abrahah says, I'm going to fight you, let us agree to this fight, and the winner of this fight will become the absolute ruler, and the loser of the fight, he and his army has to leave Yemen. So Ariyat agrees to this. And Abrahah was described as being a short, fat man. He wasn't very handsome, but he was a devout Christian. And Ariyat, on the other hand, was described as being someone who was very tall, and someone who was handsome, and someone who was, fairly well built. So Abrahah, he knew that he probably wouldn't stand a chance going into this battle fair, against Ariyat, a fair fight. He knew he wouldn't have a chance if this were a fair fight. So he makes an arrangement with a young boy by the name of Atawda. And he says to this young boy, or this young man rather, who's a part of Abrahah's army, and he says to him, listen, I want you to watch my back. He just says to him, I want you to watch my back, and if something happens, then come to my aid and help me out. So when they come out to the field and they begin to fight, because Ariyat has sort of the height advantage and the reach advantage over Abrahah, he manages to strike with his spear, and he swings it above or down upon Abrahah. فَشَرَمَتْ حَاجِبَهُ وَأَنْفَهُ وَعَيْنَهُ وَشَفَتَهُ فَبِذَلِكَ سُمِّيَ Abrahah Al-Ashram. So it is because of the swing from Ariyat that happened to strike a blow against Abrahah. By this blow, he cut his brow, and he cut his nose, and he cut his eyes, and he cut his lips. And because of this, Abrahah was given the name Abrahah Al-Ashram, the one who has been cut. And when this happened, Atawda, the boy who Abrahah had made a deal with, when he saw Abrahah get injured, he knew that he had to come to the aid of his leader. And he comes from behind and he stabs Ariyat with a spear or a sword, and he kills Ariyat. So according to the condition that they had, the loser, whether it's a fair fight or not, there's nothing in the agreement said that it had to be a fair fight, but because Ariyat lost, then accordingly his army had to leave, or those who sided with him and had to leave. Now when An-Najashi heard of this, he became absolutely furious with Abrahah. Because he had killed his commander, a person that he had put in charge of Yemen, and Riyadh was doing everything for An-Najashi anyway. But when An-Najashi found out about this, he became absolutely outraged, and he made an oath that Abrahah will never be able to come back to Al-Habashah. Now, Abrahah never wanted to stay at Yemen. No one really wanted to stay in Yemen. They always wanted to come back and see their families and live amongst their people in Al-Habashah. But when An-Najashi, when he made this decree, or when he came out with this decree, Abrahah wrote a letter to An-Najashi, and he said, أيها الملك إنما كان أرياط عبدك وأنا عبدك فاختلفنا في أمرك وكل طاعته لك. He said, O king, that Ariyat was your servant and I am your servant. But we differed in our affairs, and everything actually was for you. Like everything that we were doing was for you. إلا أني كنت أقوى على أمر الحبشة وأضبط لها وأسوس منها. He said, except that, I was stronger in loyalty to you with regards to the affairs of Al-Habashah, and I had more obedience, with regards to your commands, and more politically inclined than Ariyat. So this is what happened. And Abrahah, he cut some of his hair, and he took some sand from the land of Yemen, and he put it in a container, and he put his hair like in the container with the sand, and he sent it to An-Najashi, and he said, place it, before your foot and break it, meaning sort of to break your oath. So he took his hair and he put it in a container with sand, and he sent it to An-Najashi. He said, step on it, and meaning allow me to come back. And when An-Najashi saw the loyalty that Abrahah had really towards him, he became pleased with Abrahah, and he allowed him to continue. And Abrahah remained in Yemen, and in honor of An-Najashi, he built a huge, and they say it was a magnificent church, Kanisa, which he called Al-Qullays. And he built it in Sana'a, and the church was regarded as a structure the likes of which no one has seen ever before. And to give you an idea of the grandeur of this church, Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayhi, he narrates that he utilized Yemenis to build this church. So they used the local people to build this church, and they were required to come to work every day before the sun would rise, and if anyone showed up after the sun rose, he would chop off their hands. So Abrahah was very strict about this. And he used to take materials from the palace of Bilqis. Of course, Bilqis is the queen of Sheba, who Sulaiman alayhi salam gave da'wah to her. And so he would take a material from the palace of Bilqis, and he would take marble and stones from there, and large stones, and he erected giant columns inside the church made from aj, which is ivory, and abanus, which is ebony, and so he built these huge columns and pillars in this church in order to support the ceiling, and each column was 60 dhira' in height. So each column was approximately 90 feet in height. So it was quite a large structure. And then when all was said and done, he put a huge cross made out of gold and silver right at the top of the church. And after building it, Abrahah wrote to An-Najashi, and he said to him, إِنِّي قَدْ بَنَيْتُ لَكَ أَيُّهَا الْمَلِكِ كَنِيسَةً لَمْ يُبْنَ مِثْلُهَا لِمَلِكٍ كَانَ قَبْلَكَ وَلَسْتُ بِمُنْتَهٍ حَتَّى أَصْرِفَ إِلَيْهَا حَجَّ الْعَرَبِ. He said, O king, I have indeed built for you a church the likes of which has never been built before. And I'm not, the likes of which has never been built before for any king before you. And I'm not going to be done until I bring the Arab of the area to come to this church, and this is going to be their place of Hajj. Now it happened that some of the Arab got wind of the letter which Abrahah had sent to An-Najashi, and they became furious with this. And a man from An-Nas'a got especially enraged. And the people of An-Nas'a were people that were known to make lawful what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made prohibited in Al-Ashhur Al-Huram, in the sacred months. So they would make lawful what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited in the sacred months, and they would do the opposite. They would make prohibited what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made lawful in the other months. And of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says of this in the Quran, إِنَّمَا النَّسِيءُ زِيَادَةٌ فِي الْكُفْرِ, that An-Nasi'a, which is doing this act, is an increase in kufr. So this man, who got word of this man from An-Nas'a, and he is from the tribe of Bani Fuqaym. When he got word of this, he came to the church, and it seems like there were people in the church at the time. But what he did is he walked right inside. He defecated on the floor, so he did, the number 2 on the floor, and then he took it and he smeared it all across the wall of the church, and then he left. And when Abrahah came, he became absolutely enraged and became furious with this, and he demanded to know who did this. And the people replied to them, and they said, صنع هذا رجل من العرب من أهل هذا البيت الذي تحج العرب إليه بمكة. They said to him, the one who did this was a man from the Arab, from the people of this particular house, referring to the Kaaba, that the Arab would go to it in Mecca. So they said, it belongs to this people, these are the people who did this to your church. So after hearing this, Abrahah swore that he would destroy the Kaaba. And he prepared an army equipped with an elephant, and they say the elephant's name was Mahmud, Wallahu A'lam. And the purpose of this elephant and this army was to go and to destroy the Kaaba with its size and its strength. Specifically with the elephant to destroy the Kaaba with its size and its strength. And some say that there were 8 elephants, and some say that there were 12. But Mahmud was the largest of them, Wallahu A'lam. Abrahah then sent word to An-Najashi, informing him of what he was going to do, and then he set out. But even before he was able to get out of Yemen, an army arose to challenge him. And this army was under the leadership of a person by the name of Dhu Nafar. And he united some of the people of Yemen, some of the local people of Yemen, and Dhu Nafar decided to try to put in opposition to Najashi, but this army was easily crushed. And Dhu Nafar was captured, and he was brought before Abrahah, and Abrahah wanted to have him killed. But Dhu Nafar spoke out, and he said, أيها الملك لا تقتلني فإنه عسى أن يكون بقائي معك خيرا لك من قتلي. He said, "O king, don't kill me, because perhaps keeping me alive might be of benefit to you later on than having me killed." So Abrahah agreed, and he had Dhu Nafar chained, and he brought him along with the army. And it is said of Abrahah, وَكَانَ أَبْرَهَةُ رَجُلًا حَلِيمًا, that Abrahah was a forbearing, or he was a tolerant person. So anyway, he doesn't kill Dhu Nafar, and he chains him up and he brings him to the army with him. Abrahah ventured forward some more until he came to the land of Khaf'am, which was composed of 2 tribes, Shahran and Nahis. These tribes and those around them also united together, and they tried to put an opposition to the army of Abrahah, and to try to stop him from reaching Mecca, but they too were easily defeated. And this army was led by a man by the name of Nufail ibn Habib al-Khaf'ami. And Nufail ibn Habib, he was captured, and he was brought before Abrahah as well, and Abrahah wanted to have him killed, but Nufail replied to him, and he said, أيها الملك لا تقتلني فإني دليلك بأرض العرب وهاتان يداي لك على قبيلي خفعم شهران وناهس بالسمع والطاعة. He said, oh Abrahah, O king, don't kill me, because I can be your guide throughout the land of the Arab, because Abrahah is a foreigner, he doesn't know this land. So Nufail said to him that I'll be your guide throughout the land of the Arab, and these 2 tribes of mine, Shahran, the tribes of Khaf'am, Shahran and Nahis, we are with you in listening and in obedience to you. So Abrahah spared Nufail as well, and he brought him along, and he brought his army with him. Then the army continued until they came to At-Ta'if. Now At-Ta'if is an elevated city just to the east of Mecca, and it's about 1900 meters above sea level, so it's a very mountainous region, and they came there, and the city of At-Ta'if, they had a house there, and in this house they had the idol Allah, which they used to worship there. So Abrahah wanted to destroy it as well. But when he reached the city, a person by the name of Mas'ud ibn Mu'attib came out to meet Abrahah, and he said, أيها الملك إنما نحن عبيدك سامعون لك مطيعون ليس عندنا لك خلاف وليس بيتنا هذا البيت الذي تريد إنما تريد البيت الذي بمكة ونحن نبعث معك من يدلك عليه. He said, Mas'ud ibn Mu'attib, he came out and he said, "O king, you know what? We are your servants, and we'll listen to you, and we obey you, and there's no difference between us and you. We have no differences with you. And this house that you want to destroy, the house that has Allah, one of the idols that they used to worship, they said, this house isn't the house that you want. You want the house in Mecca. This is the one that you're after. And you know what? We're going to send a guide, and this guide will take you all the way to it." And they sent a person with him by the name of Abu Righal. And Abu Righal took Abrahah and his army until he reached a spacious land outside of Mecca, referred to as Al-Mughammis, and some narrate it as Al-Mughammas, but the former seems to be the more accepted name of it. And this area is a land that actually the area of the mountain of Arafah extends from it. So it extends from the area of Al-Mughammis. And Abu Righal, he took Abrahah and his army to this area so that Mecca was now in sight, and he actually happened to die there. So Abu Righal actually died in Al-Mughammis. And Ibn Ishaq rahmatullahi alayhi, he narrates, and Ibn Ishaq, who's narrating all of this by the way, he dies in the year 151 after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he narrates that the people, even up until his time, used to stone the grave of Abu Righal for bringing the army of Abrahah to Mecca. And there's even an indication of this that we find from Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, when he narrates that a person by the name of Ghaylan ibn Salama, he divorced his wives. There's a weaker narration that says that he had 10 wives actually during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He had married 10 wives, and the Prophet ﷺ said, divorce all of them but keep 4. And there's weakness in this narration, but the second part of this narration which is authentic. Umar ibn al-Khattab said to him, because Ghaylan ibn Salama, he divorced all his wives just so that he wouldn't have to give them any share of the inheritance. So he divided his share only between his kids. And Umar ibn al-Khattab said to him, لَتُرَاجِعَنَّ نِسَاءَكَ أَوْ لَأَرْجُمَنَّ قَبْرَكَ كَمَا رُجِمَ قَبْرُ أَبِي رِغَالٍ. Either you take back your wives, or when you die, I'm going to have your grave stoned, just as the grave of Abu Righal is stoned. And this is a sahih hadith. It comes with a chain according to the conditions of, actually the men are the men of Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So historically, I should mention that historically the name Abu Righal comes up more than once in the Seerah, and another part that we will actually discuss a little bit later on is the Abu Righal that Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As refers to, and there's other narrations, Jabir ibn Abdullah refers to him as well. And this narration is from Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, who narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they left towards Al-Ta'if and they were with them, they came by a grave. And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw this grave, he says, هذا قبر أبي رغال وهو أبو ثقيف وكان من ثمود وكان بهذا الحرم يدفع عنه فلما خرج أصابته النقمة التي أصابت قومه بهذا المكان فدفن فيه وآية ذلك أنه دفن معه غصن من ذهب إن أنتم نبشتم عنه أصبتموه. That Amr ibn al-As, he mentions that when they went out to Al-Ta'if for the Ghazwa of Al-Ta'if, they came by a grave, and the Prophet ﷺ said that this is the grave of Abu Righal, and he is Abu Thaqif, and he was from the people of Thamud. The people of Thamud are, of course, the people of whom the Prophet Salih was sent to. And he says, and he was in the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came upon the people of Thamud. And he was protected in the haram. But when he left the haram and he was going towards, I guess, Al-Ta'if, then that which came to the people of Thamud came to him as well. And this is where he was buried. And he said, and a sign of this is that if you dig this grave, you will find that he was buried with branches that were made from gold. And if you exhume it, you will acquire it. This hadith is in Sunan Abi Dawood, and it's actually narrated with a da'if isnad. But the story of Abu Righal being from Thamud is sahih, and it is found in Musnad Ahmad from Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhu, and this is sahih with a sahih isnad according to the conditions of Muslim. So there is an Abu Righal from Thamud, and there's an Abu Righal who brought Abrahah and his army to Mecca. But they're not the same people. And because the Abu Righal of Thamud, of course, belonged to the Prophet Salih. And the Prophet Salih was before Isa alayhi salam. And Isa alayhi salam was over 500 years before Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was born. So they can't be the same Abu Righal, because this is actually what we're speaking about now. This incident that is taking place now is the time of the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Abu Righal of Al-Ta'if who led Abrahah cannot be the same Abu Righal of Thamud. However, Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayhi said, in trying to reconcile between those narrations, said that their both names were Abu Righal, and they both happened to die between Al-Ta'if and Mecca. Wallahu ta'ala alam. With the army now camped at Al-Mughammis, Abrahah sent a Habashee by the name of Al-Aswad ibn Maqsud to raise the outskirts of Mecca, attack the outskirts of Mecca, and he did. And he captured the wealth of the people of Tihama, as well as the wealth of some of the Meccans there. And in this raid, he happened to capture some camels that belonged to Abd al-Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was the eldest amongst the Quraysh and their leader. And he captured 200 camels. And Quraysh, along with the neighbors, with the neighboring tribes rather of Kinana and Hudayl, they thought about putting up a resistance to the army of Abrahah, but then they realized that it was such a strong army that they would not be able to do it, so they abandoned the idea. In the meantime, Abrahah sent a messenger by the name of Hunata al-Himyari, and he told him to go into Mecca and ask for their leader and deliver the following message to the leader of Mecca. He says, he told this messenger to go and tell the leader of Mecca, إن الملك يقول لك إني لم آتي لحربكم إنما جئت لهدم هذا البيت فإن لم تعرضوا دونه بحرب فلا حاجة لي بدمائكم. He said, I want you to go to the leader of Mecca and say to him that, listen, we didn't come to wage war against you, we've only come to destroy this house, meaning the Kaaba. And if you don't put up an army or put up a fight in defense of this house, then we really have no need with your blood. We only have this one purpose, and this is to destroy the Kaaba. We don't want to fight. And Abrahah then said to the messenger, فَإِنْ هُوَ لَمْ يُرِدْ حَرْبِي فَأْتِنِي بِهِ. And if he doesn't want to fight me, then bring him, let him be a part of my army. Not really, it seems like he didn't have the intention to meet with him, but he said, just let him be a part of my army, so that people can see that the leader of Mecca is indeed, with me in this. So the messenger, he came into Mecca, and he asked the people who the leader was, and the people referred this messenger to Abd al-Muttalib. So he went to him and he conveyed the leader of Abrahah, the message of Abrahah. And Abd al-Muttalib replied and he said, والله ما نريد حربه وما لنا بذلك من طاقة هذا بيت الله الحرام وبيت خليله إبراهيم عليه السلام فإن يمنعه منه فهو بيته وحرمه. He said that, by Allah, we don't want to fight him either. And we don't have the means to fight him. Remember, they thought about putting up an opposition, but then they realized they would have no chance against it. But then he said, this is the house of Allah and the house that was built by his friend Ibrahim alayhi salam. So if Allah wants to protect it, then this is his house and his sanctuary. Allah will do so. So Hunata then said to him, he said, فَانْطَلِقْ مَعِي إِلَيْهِ فَإِنَّهُ قَدْ أَمَرَنِي أَنْ آتِيَهُ بِكِ. He said, what, then come with me, because Abrahah, he told me to bring the leader of Mecca with me. So Abd al-Muttalib went to him. Now when Abd al-Muttalib got there, he asked about the whereabouts of Dhu Nafar. And Dhu Nafar, as we mentioned, was the one who put up the opposition in Yemen against the army of Abrahah that was easily crushed. But he said, what, don't kill me, because I might be of some service to you. And Abd al-Muttalib was actually good friends with Dhu Nafar. So he said, he asked the people of the army of Abrahah, I heard that Dhu Nafar is with you, so show me where he is. And they took him to Dhu Nafar. And when Abd al-Muttalib came to Dhu Nafar, he said, Ya Dha Nafar, هل عندك غناء فيما نزل بنا. He came to Dhu Nafar, who was chained up, and he said, oh Dhu Nafar, like, do you have anything that will help us against this army that has, that's standing outside our door? And Dhu Nafar, he replied, وما غناء رجل أسير بيدي ملك ينتظر أن يقتله غدوا أو عشية. He said, what's good is a person who is chained up and he's a prisoner of a king who's can kill him at at a single word, tomorrow or in the morning or in the night. So what can I benefit you? But then Dhu Nafar said, he said, ما عندي غناء في شيء مما نزل بك إلا أن أنيسا سائس الفيل لي صديق. He said, what, I don't have anything that can help you except that I know a person by the name of Unais, and Unais is the stableman of the elephant. He said, فَسَأُرْسِلُ إِلَيْهِ فَأُوصِيهِ بِكَ وَأُعْظِمُ عَلَيْهِ حَقَّكَ وأسأله أن يستأذن لك على الملك فتكلمه بما تريد ويشفع لك عنده بخير إن قدر على ذلك. He said, what, I'll speak to this person Unais, who's the stableman of the elephant, and I'll ask him to go to the king, go to Abrahah, and I'll speak to him about you, and I'll sort of show you show him really your status amongst your people, and I'll ask him to seek permission from Abrahah to speak with him, and then you could speak to Abrahah about that which you need, and he will, intercede on your behalf if he's able to do so. So Abd al-Muttalib agreed to this, and Dhu Nafar sent for Unais. And when Unais came to him, he said, Ya Unais, إن عبد المطلب سيد القريش وصاحب عير مكة يطعم الناس بالسهل والوحوش في رؤوس الجبال وقد أصاب الملك له 200 بعير فاستأذن له عليه وانفعه عنده بما استطعت. He said, "O Unais, indeed Abd al-Muttalib, he is the leader of his people, the leader of Quraysh, and he is the owner of these camels that were taken. And he feeds the people at the bottom of the valley, like the generosity, speaking about the generosity of Abd al-Muttalib, he feeds the people in the valley of Mecca, in the bottom of the valley, and at the same time he even gives food to the beasts at the top of the mountain. And the king has taken these 200 camels that belong to him, so speak to the king on his behalf and help him in whatever you're able to do." And Unais replied, and he said, "Af'al, you know what, I'll do so." So Unais went to Abrahah, and he said to Abrahah the same thing. He said, أيها الملك هذا سيد قريش ببابك يستأذن عليك وهو صاحب عير مكة يطعم الناس بالسهل والوحوش في رؤوس الجبال فأذن له عليك فيكلمك بحاجته وأحسن إليه. He said, "O king, this is Abd al-Muttalib. He is the leader of Quraysh, and he's standing right outside your door, so give him permission to enter upon you. And he's the owner of the camels. And he feeds the people at the bottom of the valley, and he feeds the beasts at the top of the mountains, from his generosity. So, let him come in upon you, and let him speak to you about what he needs, and, do good by him." So Abrahah agreed and advised Unais to bring Abd al-Muttalib. Now when Abd al-Muttalib walked in, Abrahah was in awe by him. And because he was the exact opposite of him. Remember, we said Abrahah was a short, fat man, fairly ugly looking, they describe him. And Abd al-Muttalib was someone who was tall and grand in stature, and someone who was described as very handsome. So Abrahah, who sat on an elevated bed, he had like his seat or his cushion, it was elevated. He has to sit on top of the people. He can't sit at their level, because of his status. So, but when he saw Abd al-Muttalib walk in, he said, "You know what, I can't sit above a person like that. But at the same time, I can't let the people see me sitting next to him, because we're not equals." So he said, so he got down, and he sat on the ground with Abd al-Muttalib, like he had Abd al-Muttalib sit on the ground, and he sat down next to him because he didn't want Abd al-Muttalib to be above the people as well with him. So Abrahah then said to the translator that was with them, قُلْ لَهُ مَا حَاجَتُكَ إِلَى الْمَلِكِ. He said, say to Abd al-Muttalib, what does he need of the king? And Abd al-Muttalib replied, حَاجَتِي أَن يُرَدَّ عَلَيَّ الْمَلِكِ 200 بَعِيرٍ أَصَابَهَا لِي. He said, what I want is from the king to return my 200 camels. These 200 camels belong to me, and he took them, I want them back. So Abrahah was not expecting this. He thought Abd al-Muttalib was going to come and plead on behalf of the people of Mecca and plead with him to not destroy the Kaaba. So he wasn't expecting this, and he replied, when he saw that all Abd al-Muttalib was interested in was his camels, Abrahah replied to Abd al-Muttalib and he said, قد كنت أعجبتني حين رأيتك ثم قد زهدت فيك حين كلمتني أتكلمني في 200 بعير أصبتها لك وتترك بيتا هو دينك ودين آبائك قد جئت أهدمه لا تكلمني فيه. He said that, what? I was sort of impressed by you when I saw you. But as soon as you spoke, I lost all interest in you. I've become disinterested in you. You're speaking to me about 200 camels that I took that belonged to you. You don't mention anything about this house that is the house of your religion and the religion of your fathers that I have come to destroy. You don't even ask me about it, like you're not even concerned about it. And Abd al-Muttalib replied to Abrahah, he said, إِنِّي أَنَا رَبُّ الْإِبْلِ وَإِنَّ لِلْبَيْتِ رَبًّا سَيَمْنَعُهُ. He said, I am the Lord of the camels, and this house has a Lord, and he is going to protect it. And Abrahah replied, he said, مَا كَانَ لِيُمْنَعَ مِنِّي. Nothing is going to protect it from me. And Abd al-Muttalib returned to Mecca, and he informed the people to flee to the surrounding mountains lest they be harmed by Abrahah's army when he enters. But he and a few others remained by the Kaaba, from the Quraysh remained by the Kaaba, and they supplicated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before they too as well retreated to see what was going to be the fate of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next day, Abrahah prepared his army and ordered that the elephant, Mahmud, be faced towards the Kaaba so that it could destroy the Kaaba. But it so happened that Nufayl ibn Habib, now Nufayl ibn Habib was also a person who was captured, remember, and he told the king, don't kill me, perhaps I can benefit you. Nufayl ibn Habib, who was captured, was able to escape the shackles that he was in. And he came to the elephant and he took the ear of the elephant and he said to it, "Ubruk Mahmud, أو ارجع راشدا من حيث جئت فإنك في بلد الله الحرام." He said, "Sit down, O Mahmud, or turn back to where you came from because you are in the sacred land of Allah." So the elephant sat down. And Nufayl managed to flee into the mountains as well, where the people of Quraysh were. And the soldiers, when they found that the elephant had sat down and wouldn't move, they began to poke it and prod it with their spears and what they could to try to force it to stand. And if they would turn the elephant towards Yemen or towards Ash-Sham, it would stand up. But as soon as they would turn the elephant back towards the Kaaba, it would sit down. And they couldn't do anything to get it going. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent birds from the sea in flocks. Ababil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to them Ababil. أي متتابعة مجتمعة. Ababil means that they are a flock of birds, a huge amount of birds, and they're coming one after the other, and each one of them carrying stones called sijil. Sijil, كلمة فارسية أعربت. It's a Persian word that has become Arabized and it's become like part of the language of the Arab. And Abdullah ibn Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنه, he narrates, he says, أما السجيل هو بالفارسية سنك وجل. سنك هو الحجر والجل هو الطين. He said that it is a Persian word, from two words rather, sink and jul. And sink is stone, and jul is like clay or mud. And others, of course, give other meanings, like other words from Persian that it might be. Wallahu ta'ala alam. But in any case, that this sijil were stones or clay, and I know in English they translate it as baked clay. And Abdullah ibn Abbas anhu, he said that in one narration, he says that the sijil, these stones, were the size of hummus and adas, of like chickpeas and lentils. And other narrations actually from Abdullah ibn Abbas anhu, he said, كان أصغر حجر منها كرأس الإنسان ومنها ما هو كالإبل. He said that the smallest of the stones, in one narration from him, was the size of the head of a human, and others were the size of camels. And Ibn Ishaq narrates something that's similar to this. Wallahu ta'ala alam. In any case, the birds were carrying 3 of these stones, one in its beak and one in each one of its legs. And it began to drop them. And as for the birds themselves, the scholars, there's many different narrations, and some said they were green birds, others said that they were black, and some say that they had the heads of wild beasts, and others said that their legs were like the pawns of dogs. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. In any case, the birds began to drop the sijil. They gave this loud cry, and they would drop the sijil upon the army of Abrahah. And Ibn Ishaq rahmatullah alayhi, he narrates that if a stone hit a person from above, like if it hit him in the head, the stone would go through his body and come out from the bottom of his body. And if it hit his arm from the top, it'd come out from the bottom of his arm. And it began to just destroy their body parts little by little. But not everyone who was hit by it died or was killed. Some of the army of Abrahah began to flee. But they're looking for Nufayl. Nufayl was supposed to be their guide in the land of the Arab, but he retreated to the mountain and he's with the people of Quraysh. So they really didn't know how to get back to Yemen. So they began to wander, and the army began to split, and they go into different places, and many of them are dying on the spot, but some happen to escape or get away. And Abrahah himself, who was struck, actually wasn't killed, not yet. He began to wander the land, and he was asking people that he would run into about how to get to Yemen. And he did eventually get there, but as he's going along the way, different parts of his body were falling off from the effects of the stone. And by the time that he made it back to Yemen, it was said that he looked like a newborn bird. You know how they come out and they're very bony and slimy looking. This is how Abrahah looked when he returned to Yemen. and he told the people what had happened, and then his chest tore open and he too died. And of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed concerning this, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fil, have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the people of the elephant? Did he not make their plot go astray? And he sent against them birds and flocks, striking them with stones of sijil, and made them like an empty field of stalks, of which the corn has been eaten up by cattle. And when Ibn Ishaq, when he concludes this narration, he says, when the rest of the Arab heard of this, they began to magnify the Quraysh, and they said, "Hum ahlullah, qatal Allahu anhum wa kafahum ma'unat aduwwihim," that these are the people of Allah. Allah fought on their behalf, and He sufficed them against the equipment of their enemy, meaning the elephant that had come to destroy the Kaaba. Now, of course, what's the significance behind the story, or why do we narrate it? The significance is that the Arab had a habit of, if a significant event took place, then they would call the year, or they would refer to the year by the significant event. So this year, because of what had happened, they refer to it as Am al-Fil, the year of the elephant, and this is the widely accepted year in which the Prophet ﷺ was born. And I know we said this week we'd speak about Abdullah and his marriage to Amina, but inshallah we'll speak about that next week. But this is a context really to the year that the Prophet ﷺ was born, and we'll speak about more about that next week bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika ahmadaka wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.